Hi, I wanted to talk about something very specific in Buddhism. And I like Buddhism. As many of you know, I've talked about Buddhism a lot, specifically because I find it to be a philosophy rather than a religion. And so this morning on NPR, I was listening to an interview with a rabbi who, at 18, was heavily invested in expanding the biblical borders of Israel, which meant that he was settling what had been politically reverted to Palestine, but doing this as an Israeli citizen. So going beyond the political borders because he had a biblical reason. And of course, this caused a great amount of conflict, especially when Israel politically decided to remove those settlers. That was quite unsettling, and you should see the footage of that. But what he said was, you can't become somebody's teacher until you're willing to become their student. In Buddhism, we talk about the Bodhisattva, who was a teacher. In the form of Buddhism that I practice, Nichiren Shoshin Buddhism, with a lay organization called the Soka Gaikai, we speak of it in terms of the 10 worlds. And, ow! That was my chair. And looking at the ways that our life condition can shift instantaneously between hell and animality and animosity and hunger to teaching and learning. Now, if you recognize that there is a Buddha in every single individual, the potential for all of these 10 worlds, the highest being Buddhahood, and just under that, the 9th world being Bodhisattvahood, being a Bodhisattva, being a teacher. But those worlds connected to all the others, meaning that all of us have the potential to experience all of them. And yes, again, hell, animality, hunger, rapture. I mean, all of these experiences we all have the potential for, including Buddhahood. And if you can recognize that in each and every person that you see, that's human rights. That's what human rights is about. Not civil rights, but human rights. And this is an important distinction because I think civil rights, while advancing humanity on many fronts, is fundamentally about usurping power in its prescribed forms. And to give you an example of what this means, we'll look at the civil rights movement in America, or look at the civil rights movement, the movement for independence in India, both of which asked for citizens, oppressed citizens, to gain the cultural currency of the oppressor. I mean, let's not kid ourselves about this. And the fact that we gained access to education for many, access to a certain amount of health care, in name at least, and certainly these things are heavily eroded. Just look at public school systems everywhere. You see that civil rights allowed for many people to gain a greater access. It expanded the middle class. While that's a noble cause, I think that we should expand our notions of class, because there are many things about middle class that I think are necessary. But it isn't class specific, and it isn't as if the middle class own, for example, healthcare and healthcare coverage that they are somehow responsible for and interested in. That sort of thing that rich and poor people just don't really have to think about. So if you really look at what's going on in these conflicts that you see all around the world, it's our lack of ability to see the humanity in that person. This rabbi was talking about if he were on the front lines today, speaking to young people on his side, those are presumably those he would have access to. If he were speaking to them and he were trying to negotiate peace, he would start where Obama starts. He would listen to them. He would listen to the 18-year-old, and he would, with the assumption that this person has something to teach me. That person is a bodhisattva. That person has a potential. And if you can raise someone to that level, raise them from any condition that they're in, if you can participate in raising a person to the level where they can teach you something, because you can't make them see the Buddha in themselves, but you can help them to cultivate the teacher in them. You can start by listening, but you have to have the confidence that you also have the same potential and you have something to teach them. And that's different from arrogance. That's different from coming to tell somebody what to do. When President Obama, or as I like to call him Barack, talks about making deliberate and concerted efforts, what do you think that means? Listen. Listen. Not hearing. Not just that I've taken in the words that are coming out of your mouth, but I've considered I've considered their meaning to you, not just their meaning to me. That I'm willing to invert the equation. That I'm willing to say, what is your perspective? Not that I devalue your perspective. This man was saying on the front lines, people just want to be listened to. They just want to be validated. And they need for the other side to validate who they are. And if you're just screaming, we're going to get them, revenge, you're not validating the humanity and the other group of people. In fact, you're denying your own. And this only begets conflict. So what I'm saying is, I'm hopeful that this centuries-old conflict will soon come to a resolution.